You're lying.
Relax. So welcome to the home stretch of this weekend. In a few short hours, you'll be a graduate.
Are there certificates?
They're extra. They are available.
So now we can go on teaching in your name, right?
You could always do that.
Say more about it.
Belief is always inaccurate, simply because to believe something, there has to be something to believe, so you have to be able to clearly formulate that there is a something, which means you have to be able to resolve that there is something that is that way, and in actuality that can't be done. So anything that's believed in is a partiality, it's a caricature.
And yet this stuff shows up for people.
I don't know, you're saying this stuff shows up for people, and I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, your two examples, maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe a person expects to be misunderstood and they're understood. I mean, it's very easy to have a selective interpretation of your results, depending upon your bias towards what you expect it to look like.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, but in general, first of all, no worldview or mental interpretation is accurate. And second of all, nothing can be resolved to determine it as being a specific thing. And third of all, so then believing in anything like that is compounding. It's about three steps removed from accuracy. It's 3 steps removed from relevance. Anything can happen, and what happens will deviate from what you expect. Not just might, but will. You can have a very precise, you can be reaching to pick up the pen, and you can imagine that I am going to be picking up a pen in a second, you're reaching for it and the pen's there and you pick it up. But the actual experience of picking up the pen will be different than you imagine it to be. Experience always deviates from your expectation of it. Always, in every way. Actuality is always unique and surprising. So in the face of that, when you say, I believe something and it manifested, it depends how precisely you're claiming, it sounds like the entire thing can be spin doctored into existence. I mean, you can say, I went down and bought a lottery ticket and I won $1 million. Maybe you can say that, but most people can't say that with any accuracy. Maybe you can if you did, but most people won't have won shit, they'll have given their money away. And yet everyone who buys a lottery ticket expects to win money. They hope to win money, maybe. Maybe they don't believe they will, but they kind of, in the back of their minds, they're kind of hoping. And most of them are shit out of luck. Anyhow, the whole topic is not really relevant to what we're doing here. It's sort of a more abstract philosophical notion. What's really important is what's happening here and the way it's happening.
It's good enough.
What's the most skillful way to live your life knowing this stuff?
Well, if you know this stuff, you don't need to worry about skillful ways to live your life because you'll be living your life. And the most skillful way to live your life is the way you're living your life. Because improving the way you're living your life happens as part of living your life, or not. I mean, again, most skillful suggest that there's some external model to which you should approximate. there's some external standard, and that's what you should be trying to do, and there's no such thing. You know, your job is to be what you are exactly now, which will lead to you becoming exactly what you will become. Which can look like you living your life, and it can look like you having degrees of skillfulness, and it can look like this, that, and the other, but all of that is basically analyzed onto the simple fact of you being what you are in a dynamic, you know, participatory fashion as it is. So it's a self-regulating system. Told you I didn't know what I was going to say. That was more concise. So I'm presenting this as the yoga ready and present, but basically another thing I could be calling it is life, and it's already happening. It already is the case. I'm presenting it from a certain context of seeing it in a certain way. But all I'm looking at is what is already the case, what's already happening, what's already being the way it is, doing what it's doing with 100% efficiency intrinsic to what it is. You already are what you are, and you're already being what you are. And that very process is what I'm calling the yoga present.
People expect something special.
Well, it is special. It's inconceivably special. And what I'm suggesting is if you notice what's actually happening now, what's happening as you are what you are living your life, you'll discover the inconceivable specialness, inconceivable transcendence. Or you can be oblivious to the whole thing and stagger through your life cluelessly. That's a perfectly viable option, apparently.
Well, it seems that oftentimes both are happening.
Sure.
Feel oblivious a lot of the time, and other times you feel.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, murkiness is a mode of clarity. Murkiness is a mode of direct engagement. Confusion is a mode of intelligence. There's a saying in Dzogchen which is lovely, which is that the path to clarity is confusion. You know, another sort of more rule of thumb way of putting it is the path to doing something right is to do it wrong. The path to doing something well is to do it badly.
So are you saying it's this whole life's about learning? Can you put learning in that? You know, you learn if you're mucky, and all of a sudden you move into clarity where how mucky it is.
I would
transformed into.
More generally, I'd say this whole life is about participation.
But what if you participate out of being very unconscious and you're just participating in a very unconscious way? You can't be conscious till you see clearly.
Right. But how do you come to seeing clearly if you're unconscious?
Well, I call it getting a glimpse and taking a look like different.
Yeah, but how do you come to getting a glimpse if you're not?
Just happen, you know.
It just happens.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Pardon?
And how does it just happen?
Well, with me, I can only say me, the different glimpses I've had, it appeared, and I just all of a sudden saw clearly where I was at in life.
Sure.
And when I saw that everything started to break down, and I started to come into this clarity and live my life really focused.
So you come to it by not having it, and then somehow you come to it.
By not having it and then coming into it. But some people never come into it. I guess that's the way it is too, right?
Well, but you can't say what is happening for them. You know, there's everything's always changing.
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
Period. It's always changing. So there's no such thing as someone who's staying the same. There's no such thing as someone who isn't changing. And there's no way to assess what they're changing into, and there's no way to assess what they're changing from, because you cannot resolve what their condition is at any moment anyway.
But I never could take any action out of coming from the muck, because that's just the way it was, and everything was okay, because that's the best I could see. And then when the glimpses would come,
And yet, from
then
the,
the action.
and yet, from the muck, somehow that led to the glimpses.
After what?
From the muck, somehow that led to the glimpses. And it certainly was, the path of coming to those glimpses was your participation in what you're calling the muck.
It all unfolds the way it's supposed to.
It's a self-correcting system.
Okay.
Reality is a self-correcting system. You could say life is a self-correcting system.
Do you put timing in that, or does it just unfold?
No, timing puts itself in that.
Okay.
So I don't have to do anything.
Okay. So timing does put itself in it. Yeah.
It does if it does.
Okay. You know how sometimes things just won't open up? It's just not the right timing, and then all of a sudden, bam, there it is, and you're doing it.
Yeah, apparently they can see nothing.
Okay.
I have a question or something for you to comment on, Peter. A friend was telling me he's someone that suffers from chronic depression.
Mm-hmm.
He says he always wakes up every morning in his life with a sense of dread and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And he said this particular night he called it fatally depressed, which I assume meant suicidally depressed.
Uh-huh.
And he went to sleep as usual. And in that night, he had this dream. And this is he's a very spiritual guy, but a very meat and potatoes guy. There's no woo-woo about him. And he had this dream, and he was on a train, and he was looking out the window at all these images, and he didn't even attempt to describe them, but he said it was what the Buddhists might call the heaven walls. These scenes of unimaginable beauty and radiance and joy and love and light. And he woke up, and it was the first time in years that he'd woken up with this feeling of well-being and happiness. And his whole day, I haven't spoken to him since, I don't know if it's continued, but he said his whole day went to work, and he still had this sort of this peace. And I had a friend that used to go to this group where all they talked about was getting messages from the universe, and we would laugh about it. They see a poster somewhere, or they see something. A message from the universe today. And so I just wonder if you have any comments on what happened, which was a more profound thing than the group we're talking about. What happened to my friend? How does that work in the context of what we're talking about? How does that work? I mean, that would sort of imply that there was some meaningful something that directed help towards him. But it's really not like that, is it?
No. The nature of what this is to reveal what it is through continued engagement. This is the basic principle that I've been suggesting all this weekend in terms of this yoga. Through continued engagement with the presence of experience, its tendency is to reveal what it is, in the same sense as the tendency of water is to flow downhill. That's just its direction, that's its nature to do so. It's like kind of like a version of entropy, you could say. And this was an instance of that.
So it sort of just happened by, kind of just sort of.
Well, you can't possibly analyze the sort of chain of events or what have you, obviously, but clearly he was being with it as being a certain way in whatever context, or with a range of dynamism within that, however you want to look at it, and it changed. And this is the nature of engagement with actuality leads to and reveals change. And in the long run, that change will tend to be a revelation, a more and more profound revelation of what this is. And I can't possibly analyze depression, and certainly not this particular person's depression. But I would say in general, depression is a fantasy of partiality, a fantasy of lack, a fantasy of being cut off from something or being deprived of something. And his dream was a revelation of not being deprived. I mean, that's one interpretation. And it was meaningful to him in a way that revealed a perspective that was other than his depression perspective. And so, the important aspect of that is that the intrinsic, the process of life, the process of engagement with actuality spontaneously leads to it revealing what it is. And the more efficiently and the more intimately and the more intelligently one engages with this actuality, the more efficiently this revelation can occur. Which is the difference between just rumbling through life and engaging in what I'm suggesting as this yoga. I mean, life itself is engagement with life, obviously, intrinsically. So everyone is doing that process. Everyone is doing that yoga, if you want to put it in those terms. And what I'm talking about is if one maximizes one's intimate, intelligent engagement with this presence as across the board as possible, one maximizes the efficiency of that process of self-revelation.
It's like it kind of opens up the faucet when you're talking about water just flowing.
Yeah.
It's the way opening the faucet for more.
Well, maybe, but we can analogize it all sorts of ways, but that's not so important as the thing itself. But all form, all experiential patterns embody and reveal intelligence. By engaging with experiential patterns, one is engaging with intelligence, and this intelligence communicates meaning and resonates with itself. You could say that the intelligence embodied in experiential patterns resonates with the receiving intelligence in a resonant feedback loop that somehow builds on itself. I don't know. I mean, again, this is all mythology, but it's kind of fits in. It's like art appreciation, if someone who has no sensitivity to art, if you lead them through a museum and let them experience art and let them just be with the presence of this as flavors, they may come to develop, to whatever degree, a certain sensitivity that there's some meaningfulness in these patternings, experiential patternings, that is intrinsically a development in some sense of their experiential engagement. And the same thing implies to, and you can treat this as an art gallery. Everything you're seeing is a work of art, and you just be with it and be with it. To be with any experiential pattern, anything you're showing up in sight or in sound or in any experiential field whatsoever. Be with it as an art presence, and enjoy it. And that is intelligent engagement, which will tend to maximize the development of more of the same.
I think a good little thing too, you talk about playing with different things and engaging and attending. And I think a lot of us, when we go through life, we all do, you go to the subway and ask for a sandwich, or you do it in the checkout line, or you pass somebody on the street. We're just constantly in contact with people, and so in a way, we never really see them or engage with them or notice. I mean, we see them in this certain age. I think that's something wonderful to play with, because if you start actually seeing the person, it's like amazing.
Of course, people are all unique flowers. People are all complete one of a kind. And letting yourself appreciate that is more intimate engagement with the actual presence, as opposed to relating more predominantly with just your ideas of it. Oh, like just a person, you're defining a person by their station in life, or their gender, or their role, or whatever. And if you're doing that, then you're de-emphasizing your awareness of their uniqueness and their, the inherent meaningfulness embodied in their flavor. And so you're damping down the efficiency of your drinking in that message, so to speak.
And it's like presence is looking at presence.
No, but that's always the case.
And it's more powerful than, you can do that, I think, looking at a flower, but I think
Anything whatsoever.
but when you're looking at a human like that, it's like,
Yeah,
if you take the time with
But really, anything whatsoever, anything. You can take a piece of wood, and if you see what it is, it's a gem. It's a crystal of perfect light. You look at the patterns of wood and wood grain. This floor, I've been sitting here looking at this floor, and it's difficult for me to tear myself away. All these incredible patterns of wood, and each one absolutely unique, and each one just, like a Rosetta Stone of implication. It's just exquisite. But all forms like that, all experiential patterns, all forms that appear in experience of whatever degree of subtlety or what have you, is the same in the sense that it's a pattern embodying meaningfulness, embodying intelligence, embodying profundity. In irrational ways that cannot possibly be proved or demonstrated or enunciated, but nonetheless it's actual. And letting yourself feel that feeds you and educates you in that milieu, and also develops your ability to do more of the same. So you just build, when you start doing this, you get better at doing it, and it just feeds on itself, and all of a sudden you're just, basically surfing on transcendental intelligence. That's presented in infinite forms that are just libraries. They're treasures of intelligence and meaningfulness. I mean, in one sense, it's just developing aesthetic sensitivity, but across the board, not a specialized aesthetic sensitivity to this or that medium, but just aesthetic sensitivity to experiential form. And there's nowhere that can be found in experience. It's not a bottomless fountain of profundity, of meaningfulness, of uniqueness.
You're really talking about forms or things, but also this can be done with movement.
Well, when I say form, I mean any experiential patterning. I don't mean something you're seeing.
And also emotions.
Any experiential form. Anything, any experience always shows up as form, even if the form is very amorphous. It's always some degree of patterning, and all patterning is infinite. It embodies infinite intelligence and profundity. Period. All of it. There's a language of movement. There's a language of mudra. This is really fun to play with. You can sit. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm using my hands as an example, but it doesn't matter. You can sit and feel the energy of holding your hands a certain way, and then shift one of your hands or one of your fingers a millimeter, and feel how the energy shifts. And you can do this and just have your hands dancing with each other, and just feel what that feels like. And you just you go into a universe of just like this vast symphony of juiciness. And you're just using virtually nothing to tune it. And I mean, that's a very specific example, but the same thing applies across the board. You can watch them, you know, when I'm sitting in a room now and there's a bunch of people here, appearing, and everyone's moving slightly a little bit, and just watching the symphony of all emotions that happen and the orientations that they suggest. It's like this incredibly rich music. You know, it's just dripping with meaning and with you know, an irrational profundity. And so this is just, so feel that and let yourself feel it and develop a sense of how juicy it is, of how rich it is. It's really like aesthetic, you know, developing a sense of aesthetic appreciation or aesthetic sensitivity. You know, in a profound sense, this yoga is just sensitivity training. You're already doing it, just let yourself do it more.
Mm.
You already know how to see something and see amazingness. You know, there's no limit to how profoundly that can occur, and there's no limit to where you can find that embodied. I mean, most people may know that an incredibly spectacular, beautiful sunset is amazing, but you can walk along a dirty, cracked sidewalk with dog shit on it, and it's equally amazing. But it's a matter of tuning into the way in which that's done. And it's all the same. All experiential patterning is the same. I mean, it's not the same. It's all infinitely different. It's all infinitely unique. But it's all the same in the sense of patterning involving bottomless, infinite meaningfulness and profundity and intelligence. It's like a library with a secret message, or an infinity of secret messages, and you're letting yourself read those messages. But they're not messages that go into words or logic or anything you can, you know, report or tell someone else about. But just because it's irrational doesn't mean it's not profound and powerful and relevant. Because life itself is irrational. All this is irrational. You know, we humans are heavily biased towards logic and definability, and that's all a sham. It's all a pretense. There is no such thing, and there never was such a thing. So developing a sense of the irrational, but again, that comes with this sensitivity. When you begin to feel the meaningfulness of the patterns that appear to you, and when I say appear, I don't mean that, again, I don't mean necessarily just visually, in any experiential sense, the patterns of thought, the patterns of sensation, the patterns of subtle vibes, doesn't matter. When you begin to read that language and appreciate the irrationality of it, you learn, you actually find you can understand it. Because it's irrational, but what you are is irrational too. And so you see yourself, it's like seeing yourself in a mirror. You find yourself in everything, you find yourself in all form. And that's what that meaning that you find is your own life force, which is pure irrationality. It makes no sense, it's nothing you can justify or explain or describe. It's just, and yet it's not nothing. It's everything. It's all positivity.
I think most people think irrationality is like sort of a negative thing.
Exactly.
That's right.
That's what I'm talking about. The bias of rationality and logic as if it's some kind of superior condition,
Right.
as opposed to a total fantasy. A claim, it's an assertion. There is such a thing as monopoly, and I'll prove it. Here's the rules.
I am the little car.
So I think like when I talk about this to my daughter, for instance, and she is 8 years old, so that notion of what is irrational, talking to her, it seems that the only approach would be rationality.
No, I would say, if you want to communicate the irrational, the best approach is sensory. You can, feel a piece of fur, what it feels like, or smell a smell, or look at a flower. And what is it that makes that special? What is it that makes that have something to it? It's irrational. It's nothing that, there's no reason for it. You can't justify it or describe it. And yet it's a juiciness in the experience.
But I think it's at the same level of immaturity. The instruction gets construed as, okay, so now I need to throw back something, and so her mind actually starts chopping up things into.
Maybe, but that's okay. You know, especially when dealing with someone who's immature like that, who's younger, you can point these things out, but then be gentle with it and be patient to let it percolate through. And you know, when she has these kinds of suggestions, in time, she may reflect on it, and in time she may come to see that you know that there's more to it, or come to it in her own way in some sense.
Usually it kind of ends up with a joke.
Well, maybe, yeah, but joke's good. Joke is good. Laughter is good. Laughter is irrational. Jokes are irrational. I mean, the whole thing is, it's an energy communion that basically makes no sense. It's absurd. But when you laugh with someone, I mean, there's a real resonance there.
But I also find laughter, I find myself laughing or making attempts at humor when I find things are difficult to process.
Sure. But that's fine, because again, that's actually very wise, because you know, you're going to irrational and you're going to a basic okayness. Because in laughter, there's a sense that it's okay, even if it's not okay, it's an okay because you can laugh. You know, you can have something that's a problem and still laugh at it as a joke, and all of a sudden it brings it in a different perspective, you know. So I think that's nice. And also I think the relationship of a father to a daughter, you're supposed to make her laugh. That's a good thing to do. If that's all you do, that's good parenting. My opinion.
This whole thing sort of seems like just the means instead of a means to an end.
Of course.
Yeah, and we're so programmed to look for the end, whatever means.
There is no condition of finality.
No.
This is the ongoing, unfolding condition of finality.
Yeah, it makes us appreciate or lets us appreciate the quality, whatever it is, the lusciousness of the means.
Yeah.
And that is.
The idea of an ending, of a result is pure fantasy. Because every end is just another beginning. There is no final event or final condition. Every condition just leads to another condition. So which one of them's the end? How could there be an end unless there was no more condition? And if there was no more condition, there would be no one around to notice it was the end. You know, I have this image in I call my website what do I call it? The Open Doorway.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, because experiencing itself is always the opening of a door, which always leads to the opening of the door, which always leads to the opening of the door. And all you ever get to is a door that opens. So every experience, you go through that experience, and what do you get to? The next experience that you go through. The next experience that you go through. And it's just endless unfoldment, endless opening.
And you turn it this way and it's free fall.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of ways to play with that, but it's always this continual opening. And curiously, or maybe not curiously, because it's all irrational anyway, there's no reason to suppose it should be one way or another. It sort of has a directionality. It moves towards unfoldment. It always moves towards its own unfoldment, like a kind of an entropy or something.
So a little while ago, a little story was going on in my head, and when people, I'm meeting up with some folks at a party later tonight, and they asked me where I was and what I got out of this, and so I'd be saying something like pointers, and pointers were, pointers past my current dead ends, but then it's again pointers to pointers to pointers. And in that sense that you say, like doorways, opening doorways, and then I was just processing that as to like, could it be an infinite regression that way? And so it appeared that Hoja joke about him losing his key in the darkness and searching for it in the light. So it seems like he's searching for it in the light because it's just so much easier to do that.
Right.
Then and then to actually go around searching in the dark, who knows, the scorpion might sting, whatever.
Yes.
And so I think we're all kind of stuck in this rut because we want to. And this this pointer is something that says, okay, here's a easier light level way for you to float along to the next, and then but then again it's going to be the same thing.
It's always life. It's never going to not stop being life. But the thing about life is it's more than you think it is. No matter what you think it is, it's more than that. And so really what I'm suggesting is to take advantage of that more. So that way you can get out of your stuckness, because your stuckness is because you think you're stuck. And you can always notice ways in which you're not really stuck. And then all of a sudden that you're rolling again.
And when it's more than you think it is, it's not because you just haven't thought big enough, it's that it actually is transcending thought.
Yeah, it's more than it can be thought.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why all thoughts are intrinsically inaccurate, I mean, I've said this many times this weekend, anything you can think is untrue, i.e. inaccurate. And the reason for that is because reality cannot be captured in thought. It cannot be resolved into something that's definable that can then have a thought accurately correspond or refer to it. So, thought says, this is a cup. Sure, it's a cup, but it's so much more than that. Experientially, it's a universe of qualities. And a cup can be a universe of qualities, sure. Because this is a cup and it's a universe of qualities. But let yourself see that it's a universe of qualities, it's just a cup. Not a very nice one at that. All of a sudden you're making it small, and it's not small. Experience is its vast, bottomless richness, and we make it small by thinking of it, because all of our thinking is whittling it down to little bite-sized, little conceivable pieces, and then we play with these little markers of thought, and then if you're unfortunate enough to forget that these markers refer to something that's vast and huge and amazing, then you're liable to think that what you're referring to actually is these like these little dumb chunks, and it's just little dumb chunks too, and it isn't. So you deprive yourself of noticing and appreciating the richness of it.
Yeah, I really like that word that you use frequently of partializing.
Yeah, it is. It's partializing. You create a caricature. It's like, one image that I come up with from time to time is, it's like you say you have a kid and they draw a stick figure and they say, this is mommy. And they draw a circle and a line and a cross for the arms and then a little upside down V for the legs. Say, this is mommy. This is what mommy looks like. It's like, well, it's kind of, but mommy actually looks a little bit different, a little bit more than that, don't you think?
Right.
And that's what thoughts are like. Thoughts are like stick figures.
Very, yeah.
They're
very
stick
much.
figure representations of things that are vast, multidimensional, dynamic, transcendental actuality. And so no problem. But notice that that's the case. There's nothing wrong with thinking, but don't cut yourself off from the real thing by falling into the dullness of thinking that the real things correspond to the ways you're used to thinking of it, which are pathetically diminished.
Now, it seems like that the sensitivity training is so potent because also, for me, the thought just, the role of thoughts is not anywhere near as big as I thought it was.
No,
It's almost like I can see them floating around in like something so massive, they're just almost
This is the
ridiculous.
experience in this yoga, is that thought shrinks in how much area of the experiential field it seems to take up, and it reveals itself as being this small, tiny little subsystem in this vast universe of your experience. When you get good at it, even sensory experience shrinks like that. So, your visual field, and all the field of your body sensations is a tiny little subsystem in a vast, huge system that has absolutely nothing to do with physical orientation, but is present in experience, right here, right now. And if you let yourself be, tune in to be sensitive to the subtler vibes, you pick up on that. It's not even hard, it's very blatantly obvious. But we get distracted by the gross things. Imagine you're sitting in a inconceivably big warehouse the size of a football stadium, but it's completely dark in there. And there's one spotlight that shines a beam about a foot wide and shining on a little patch of the floor. And so that's all you can really see. And so the tendency is you ignore all this vague blackness and you go to the little bright spot. And that's what our sense fields are like. Our sense fields are just like a little narrow beam spotlight that makes this really bright light, and so our attention is drawn to it. Here we are, I'm with vision and sound and touch and thought and what have you, and that's sort of here. I'm really zoomed into that. But if I take an inventory of the full field of my experience is this vast, subtle darkness with all sorts of percolating vibes and events and subtle energies in it, and the sensory experience is this little bitty spotlight, little bright spot floating around in the middle of it. Or like if you look at the Earth from space, the Earth, all of this event, all of this amazing stuff that humans are so concerned about, and you take a picture of the Earth from roundabout Saturn, and Earth is this tiny little freaking light. Everything the humans are all bent out of shape about it in this tiny little dot. And it's really like that. Your experience right now is like that. All the things we care about with the waking life in your body and all that is this tiny little dot of light in a vast field of subtle energy that you also are. But we don't notice that because the bright light is so distracting and the other part is so subtle by comparison. But in fact, it's easy to notice.
And is the noticing, is the way into that noticing like what you had us do earlier, just of being with those various fields?
Sure, that's
and
a good trick.
Feeling.
Well, a really good trick to discover and explore the subtler the subtle experiential dimensions is take a sensory inventory. Start with your physical senses. See the sense of vision, this oval is floating here. And you see the sense of touch, this sort of sparkling cloud of tingling sensation that's floating wherever it's floating, somewhere in the vicinity of the sense of vision. And find it. And so just the field of vision is floating here. It's not like you're letting go of that. So here's the field of vision and the field of touch, tingling. And here's the field of hearing, sort of this echoing, reverberating cavity of sound vibrations. And then, what are some other senses? Smell, taste, whatever. And thought, okay, good thought. Okay, there's thought. There's this space and this dimension where all these little sort of northern lights-like vibes are appearing and fluctuating delicately the way they do. And okay, so here's that there. And then just go a little bit outside all that. What's there? it's not nothing. It's not like you hit a wall or fall off into non-existence. It's not nothing. And so be with that, feel what's there. You know, go an arbitrary distance, experiential distance outside of the sense fields that are all floating in a little constellation, and feel what's there. Not nothing. Something there, feel what it is. And then go even farther outside that, and feel what's there. And so on and so forth.
Also, that always brings me to that conundrum of when we talk about things and we talk about, as you're just saying now, it's not nothing, then I always come to what exactly is nothing? I mean.
Well, that's the point. There is no such thing as nothing.
Imagine what nothing is. I mean, I thought.
But that's a separate issue. That's just a riddle. That's an intellectual riddle.
It drives you crazy.
Well, of course, but it's pointless to think about. You can't find nothing. If you could find if there was a nothing you could find, it'd be a something. So
I
mean, if I say this is nothing and it's right there, it would be a something if you found it.
Oh, yeah, I don't see it either.
Even if it was a vacancy, it would be a vacancy is a something. It's a condition of vacancy that exists. So nothing exists. Nothing doesn't exist, so of course you can't find it.
Because maybe everything's something.
Yeah, but all this thing is just philosophy. It's just a silly thought. Experience is felt.
But sometimes, Peter, if you ask yourselves those questions that can't be answered that make you sort of crazy, I think sometimes, at least with me, it makes my thoughts give up and say, oh, how that's
Sure.
And then it creates some space for something.
But the space is already there, so you can bypass that. You go directly to the space by feeling it without needing to try and slam in your thoughts. You can. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's a little unnecessary in my opinion. But you know, whatever works. By all means, there's no rules. You play with it for yourself and see where you get mileage.
So when we have intuitions about different things, using your metaphor, the warehouse and the light, are they little excursions into the darker places?
Of course.
You're just getting that intuition and.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're actually in the light areas in terms of that metaphor. It's not like you're actually in your sense fields, even if your attention is drawn to the power flame. You're actually in the whole thing already. So you're already engaged with the parts. I mean, this is what creates the phenomenon that we call the unconscious mind, in terms of the extent that there is such a phenomenon, in terms of the extent we call it that. It's not unconscious. It's just not. It's not habitually. The waking mind is not habitually aware of it, because the waking mind is so distracted by sensory phenomena that the waking mind gives the primary importance to. When you go to sleep, where's the waking phenomenon? Where are you going when you go to sleep? It's not nowhere. But it's someplace it's different than the sensory dimensions, for example.
Peter, is nothing like the definition of potential in the sense of a loudspeaker when it's at rest, we'll say, not pushing out or going in, since it's generating waves. Is nothing perhaps when the loudspeaker is neither in nor out?
No, I mean, that's a condition of dynamic equilibrium. I mean, suppose you have a speaker that's not even hooked up, it's just sitting there. But even if it's sitting there, it's not moving, it's resonating with any ambient sounds and wind currents in the environment to some subtle degree, and resonating with gravity waves from distant quasars from even more subtle degrees, theoretically. And so, so in a sense, it's always in a state of dynamic equilibrium. So nothing is everything in that sense, because this is always in a state of dynamic equilibrium. This is, even if this is moving from here to here and back again, at any given point, it's perfectly balanced being there because that's where it has to do to go there. You know, reality is always in a condition of dynamic equilibrium. And all motion is a balance, is a maintaining of and an establishment of dynamic equilibrium.
So when going through the feel beyond that exercise. So I just after I did that, the first beyond that was kind of an energetic feeling, and then after that there was like a vision, closed eyes vision feeling. It just seemed. Does it get beyond?
Well, you begin to explore the way that, it begins to become more heavy-handedly obvious the way that mentality interacts with apparition. And, it's like in the realms of, let's say, as you get finer and finer, the effect of mind becomes more and more heavy-handed in apparition. For example, in the sensory world, I can think anything I want about something, and the experience itself doesn't change that much, even if its sort of flavors may seem to. But in the dream world, if I think differently, all of a sudden the whole thing morphs. And when you get into these subtle worlds, it becomes even more so. You get to the point of sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, where you're trying to find what's objectively there and what's being fantasized as being there becomes a line that you can't even find. And that starts to get very interesting.
But basically, it's going to be. You have the instrument. We have this instrument, so it's going to come in kind of those.
Not necessarily, because you also may be outside the instrument. You may find you can discover spaces that are extra physical. And the way you can tell that they're extra physical is they're not dependent upon the state of the physical condition. And so you can explore these states, these conditions, by deliberately altering the state of the physical body. Like you can you can do this exploration when you're wide awake and feeling good. You can do this exploration when you're dead tired. You can do this exploration when you're a little tipsy or whatever. And you'll notice that you'll be able to distinguish between the bodies changing. Like for me, it's very clear the difference between body mentality, like the brain thinking, versus subtle energy thinking. Because subtle energy thinking is not affected by alcohol or tiredness, whereas brain thinking is. So in other words, so there's energy events on different levels, and the farther you get, metaphysically speaking, the farther you get from the physical orientation, the less relevance the physical condition has on state of events there. And this is interesting.
What about the experience of deep sleep, not dream state, but
Well, you played that. What about it?
I mean, there's not a lot you can say about it. I have a sense.
And the way you say it's hard to talk about.
Yeah. It's just kind of a bareness, but it's like you say, it's not nothing.
No,
At
exactly.
all. It's full, like you said, also full field.
Yeah, and there's no definitive ways to map these things or orient them. It's like, what's the deep sleep state? It's like, oh, the deep sleep state is exactly this, and it's exactly there. It's like, no. The point of all this is to ask the questions, not to find the answers. To find how mysterious it is, find how open-ended it is. And find how much, or how, better yet, how little what it actually is has to do with what we think it is and where we think it is.
What means are you engaging when you, a moment ago you were talking about non-body reference? Just a couple of sentences.
What means? There's only one means. The same means you use to experience. What means are you using to see your experience right now?
My visual, the visual.
What means are you using to see your visual? What is seeing your visual? How are you doing it? Or let me say that. How is what is seeing your visual field seeing it?
I mean,
It's a good question to ask though. Look at it, let's check it out. Yeah. Just because there's no ready answer doesn't mean the question can't be asked with profundity. It's an interesting exploration. Just because you can't say what's there doesn't mean there's nothing there. Should we take a 5-minute break? And we'll have about another hour to visit.
Wait. Hello. He was leaving.
Oh.
show the audience here. This place was full, and then everybody went to the game.
Who won? Does anybody know?
Yeah,
Who won?
Seattle didn't.
What?
Seattle did not.
Oh, they did not.
Who were they playing?
Is there any people?
Panthers. Huh?
How many people online?
I don't know. I don't know. My wife is online.
7
7
viewers.
viewers. Yeah.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Did you say 74?
7.
7.
That was a lot.
But they stopped broadcasting, so they don't really.
No, it isn't stop broadcasting. No. It's you wanted to stop broadcasting.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay, so it hasn't stopped yet.
No.
It's going.
There's southern.
Nice.
Those-
Oh, like you're in Southern India.
No.
Southern
Southern US.
on camera.
It was really interesting. It was kind of like what he's talking about. So, I normally hear you with an Indian.
And that was a nice gentle
It
can.
wasn't like,
Helen,
it was like whatever parts
a nice gentle.
the sound that had a southern thing.
It's
going on.
good. It's good.
I was picking up on that part more than anything else. There's a different partiality that was employed.
I said something before. I thought he said something about.
There we go.
Yeah, come on. How do I go with that?
All that circle. See,
I thought he said that there was something that he did.
No, I don't think it says what it
Other references. What
I heard a southern, I had my eyes closed. I heard a man with a southern accent. I opened it, it was him.
Maybe. Somebody could yawn on the phone and I'll yawn.
Oh, yeah.
I always wondered what that was.
Yeah, it's weird. It definitely gets transmitted.
Don't watch the first half. Oh, Alan told me it was everything that could go wrong went wrong. And he said Marshawn was inconsequential.
This is
Did they start with Marshall?
there's some of that the coffee that's on the, you can smell it, they smell it.
Right.
I think that's pretty gross in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Around each other. She said, you better use this up within about a week.
Is it good as well back?
Have you ever seen, look at, well, actually, that Packers game where they miraculously came back from last year? But when Marshawn ran, there was a touchdown he ran, and he's in the end zone, and all of his teammates are coming up, and he's like, don't celebrate by smashing into me.
Yeah.
He's very self-protective.
It's about,
Yeah.
oh, sorry. And so,
Yeah.
It'd be a nice box to have.
Yeah.
I think that's-
it was just kind of.
Yeah. Jesus. Yeah. He's very amusing. So he never brought Mr. Michael Ford to sleep?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's their deal. Oh, is that right? Wet?
I will be in a minute.
It will be very soon.
Is it this week?
No, in a minute.
Wow.
I was just saying, it seems like I feel like we're pulling in this energy of the first.
Right. I mean, the Panthers had they just got really good.
They're all the students now, and really like it. We work with them. Expanding the horizons. We're two different words. There was actually, this is what's happened, so there was no plan, right?
Even if there was, good luck with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that caffeine kicked in, that's great, I was about to have this. It blocks the little receptors where you sleep, it just, this little blocker, and then drowsiness goes away.
Right. It is
Caffeine.
fascinating. It is.
So it's working?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Live.
Yeah. Well, and they were just.
9 viewers. We have 9 viewers.
Yeah, they're like.
Since we went on break, we had 2 more added, I guess they like that.
Do we know who it is?
No, I don't. Can't tell.
I need a better bell.
Yeah, Alan's texted me and said he felt around.
Might not find this one
I probably won't
Find it
watch
up on YouTube and on his website is a link to all of it. Years and years.
Oh, let's see how it is.
yesterday afternoon. This I got a little bit lost.
I always say,
Listen to that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I do.
Really?
Yeah,
always
it's
YouTube.
YouTube, but I can watch it again. It's useful. It's just to reflect and pick things up. It doesn't pass them down. I'll even transcribe it, read it, understand it.
Sometimes I do that with you.
There is a, do you go to Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a Facebook page. We'll put it
I
in
do know him,
these
but I get to
snippets.
Oh, you are? You mean this page?
It's called Open Doorway, that is. Some other guys put it together. It's called Open Doorway. It's a Facebook called Open Doorway. Go
Not
there
the
and-
Peter Brown.
Yeah, it's Peter from Peter Brown. It's another guy. It's put the site together. I mean, the web page. I remember that. The Facebook post. It's not Peter Brown. He's not behind it. But it's all Peter Brown stuff.
So, go to Open Doorway on
Just go Open Doorway on Facebook. Yeah, check that out. So we're uploading a lot of excellent stuff that we've transcribed.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Thank you. Could you leave some out in the kitchen?
Yeah.
An interesting side effect of experimenting with this sort of experimenting with your deep, it's called the deep experiential field, analogous to deep space investigation, outside of your sensory fields, is after a while you'll notice much less of a division between the waking being asleep and dreaming. You'll have much more of a sense of, as these different states come to the forefront, you'll have much more of a sense of just sort of being there with it more or less continuously.
I find this topic is very intriguing, very interesting. Lately, I feel like much more easily just to stay in this. In this complete openness, I can see the thought is very little.
Yep.
It has just the ephemeral, just to go passing through like a snake. I don't know how to consider, just passing through.
Yes.
Yeah, almost like a thread or something like smoke. So it has no importance whatsoever. But still constantly being caught up once I focus into it. But I can always go out and see it's so unimportant. In this field also the sensory is just randomly happening in this space. But I still couldn't. I never been suggested to looking outside of the sensory field. So I'm still bounded in this, the five sense things. But there's something that is kind of difficult for me. It's kind of a challenge. I'm always feel like I want to try hard. So by trying hard, I cannot.
Right. Sure.
So this could be a bit of challenge.
Well, this is why it's best to be sort of playful with it and relaxed, because if it's something you're trying to do, then all of a sudden that closes it up, tightens it up. Whereas if you're just playing, like you're playing a game or just having fun, entertaining yourself, then it lightens it up, it loosens it up. So it's less like grabbing. But a very simple way to get outside the sense fields is see what is seeing your sense fields. Is it in the sense fields or not? What is seeing your sense fields? Where is it located? So here's your field of vision, right? Just notice your field of vision sitting here, floating here like this sideways ovoid, right, with fuzzy edges. What's seeing that? Where is it? Where is it? You can't answer that question, but if you sort of feel where it is, you find something very interesting. And just, I recommend you just play with that.
Could you say that again, when you're seeing?
I'm using vision as an example.
Yeah.
But what is seeing your field of vision?
Right.
I mean, we ordinarily think of our field of vision as a seeing. But okay, here's the field of vision floating. It's here. What is seeing? And where is that?
And then don't know and see what sort of comes up?
Well, they can see it, what's seeing your field of vision? Check it out, they can see. I mean, this is an experiment. You don't know what you're going to find. And maybe you won't find anything, or maybe you'll just spin off into thought. But you can play with this, and somehow your field of vision is being seen. Where is it located? What space is it in? Your field of vision is in its own space, and your field of vision, the space of your field of vision is floating in the bigger space of your sphere of experience, right? And what is seeing that?
I have some.
What's it sitting on? What's it oriented towards?
Is it almost, and I don't want to pinpoint it because I don't want to be able to see it, but it's almost like when you were talking about awareness. All of a sudden I could just feel the awareness kind of floating. I couldn't touch it. Is it kind of like that where you can't touch it, but you just.
Well, you can't pin it down, but
Yeah.
but all actuality can't be pinned down. But it exists in its own quality of dimensionality. That is a different dimensionality than the dimensionality of the field of vision. The field of vision sort of grows its own dimension just by its presence. I mean, the field of vision sits here, and just because of its nature, it presents this sort of three-dimensional panorama of visual imagery, right? Just floating in this ovoid. But that ovoid is floating in a space which is not the same space as the space that is showing up in the field of vision. Like the space that this room is in, the walls over there and you're closer to me. And I mean, all of that space and the dimensions that you see in the field of vision, the space that the field of vision is floating in is not just an extension of that space. It's its own kind of space. It's like its own dimension. And so what is that dimension? Where is that dimension? What is seeing field of vision? Where is it? What's its dimension? And it's not there's any right answer. This is an invitation to explore. And the point is to discover that very concretely, very immediately, and obviously, not as the result of some abstract exploration, but very concretely, you discover a dimensionality that's completely outside the physical dimensionality. Yeah. I mean, this is very immediate and it's right here. The field of vision is right here, but it stops at itself, and that is floating in something else, which is a whole other space. It has its own dimensionality. It's not a simple dimensionality of ups and downs in three dimensions, but somehow it's a different space. It's its own space that this is in. Vision is contained in this other space that it's appearing in. And just feel how that is, feel what's up in there.
There's no kind of stopping.
Right, that's the point. There's no edge, there's no stopping, there's no bottom.
Stopping. Yeah, wow.
And that space is just floating. What's it sitting on? It's just floating. It's just this bubble that
It's kind of exciting.
exists in infinity.
Yeah.
Without edges. But it's a concrete thing. See it. See that it's actual.
Yeah, when you can really, like you say, really get in there.
Because you already are in there. You're actually very familiar with it. It's not even a mystery or a discovery. It's just noticing something that you're not used to paying attention to. Because like the spotlight in the dark warehouse, you're so used to focusing on the light, you don't notice the space around the light. So we're so used to focusing on, in this case, field of vision. And of course, that's just an arbitrary example.
You stay in that one-dimensional area rather than expanding.
Yeah, that exists in a space that is beyond that.
Yeah.
And if you look at any sense field, you discover the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not like reality ends where the edge of the sense field. The edge of a sense field, you get outside that sense, but it's not nothing. And you can also do this sort of geometrically, like in the case, let's be with the field of vision again, but you can do this with any sense field. So look at your field of vision and sort of localize its center, just sort of visualize the point of it, and then while you're continuing to look at that point, let your attention focus following out and out towards the edge of the field of vision and try and find the edge. And of course, you don't really find the hard edge; it's just like it's fuzzy and fuzzy and fuzzy. And then, at a certain point, you're past the edge, but it's not nothing. It's not vision anymore. You're outside of the field of vision. You're outside of this oval, but you're not nowhere. Yeah, and so check that out. Explore that.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
That's interesting.
Of course, it's exciting. This is exciting stuff. I've been trying to tell you all that.
I'm kind of getting it.
Yeah. And it's not even subtle. It's blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
We just don't pay attention to it because we don't think like that.
Wow.
Is that's also one of the methods that the Dzogchen masters do when they shock you and they startle you, and then you see something you've always noticed, but it's just like, there's no senses there, right? It's kind of that.
It's a similar kind of thing. That suspends the interpretive framework.
Yeah, and it's just waiting to try to, and then you just recognize that state.
Yeah.
It was funny, like yesterday we were talking about, I was saying about the 60s, you said everybody, had their own reality. And so I turned the news on today, and here's this man talking on the news, and he goes, well, in this reality, everybody has their own perspective. Now, I would have never even paid attention to that, except it came up in my reality, because the communication unit, it probably would have bypassed it, wouldn't have been important, but there it was. The same thing as expansion. You just don't know what's out here. Until you,
You don't know what's there till you look, and you can look. But you should just not bother to.
Yeah.
So would a tip be that you, like speaking about the suspensional interpretive frameworks, would a trick be to stay with things unresolved?
Well, absolutely, ultimately, but that might be easier said than done. But yeah, certainly, if you can find a way to do that. The way he's talking about is a specific trick using startlement. It's a yogic technique that's used in Tibetan yoga, where the master will make a very loud noise suddenly without warning you. And something very interesting happens then. It's mechanical. Even if you know it's coming, it'll happen anyway. And for a moment, everything opens up. And your interpretive framework is just suspended. It's just the presence of your experience. Want to try it?
Yeah, let's try it.
I can't do it. My voice.
You did
You
it.
gotta
You do it?
Okay, surprise us.
Okay, here we go.
No, don't tell us. Surprise.
1, 2, 3.
I'll do it later.
Real loud and real fast.
We're ready.
Good.
That was good.
Do it again. Just right away. It's like there's a second where it's just kind of, and then it closes down again.
That's right.
You keep doing it. So you lead how it is. It's about like that, about that rhythm for me. And so the point of this trick is you experience this over and over, and notice.
You want another one?
Sure, just keep surprising us. Interrupt me. You experience this over and over, and you just notice what it's like in that one little instant before it closes down again.
Just
a real quick
caretaker that lives
Yeah, it's right.
So how can we do this without him?
You can do it.
You can do it yourself.
You can do it yourself.
What works for me well is slamming the car door. Every time when I does that,
Yeah, that's good.
everything shuts
Or
down.
That's
if
And
a
you
it's
good
have
getting
a
longer,
if you have a
longer.
firecracker, or if you have something you can hit that's very loud,
Oh,
like
okay.
two sticks and bang them together. A clap works if you do it close to your ears.
That's
But
good.
it's subtle in a way, but it's also very obvious. It's mechanical. It's about the way your brain works.
Wow.
Because the brain has a hardwired mechanism. That's very good. Keep it up. The brain has a hardwired mechanism. Don't really stir it though. The brain has a hardwired mechanism that suspends its thinking process to look for danger.
Yeah.
And when it gets started like that, it's like all of a sudden it's like fight or flight is activated as potentiality. So it's mechanical. But from the yogic point, aside from that, but from the yogic point of view, it's wonderful because where the mental activity is suspended, there's a being with the experience in an open-ended way that is a little different than the normal mode of just sort of the continuity of feeling what it is and feeling what's going on, which happens unconsciously and continuously.
So if this were to occur more frequently, does the brain just kind of habituate to it and then?
Nope,
It does not?
does not.
Wow.
It's mechanical. It'll work always, every time.
Wow.
So,
And so it can
and
be
the point
expanded?
isn't to be doing it all over and over again. The point isn't that. The point is to notice what's there. And when you become familiar with seeing what's there, you can get to that, so to speak. You can see what's there without the mechanical aid.
Wow.
Would you say it's quite closely related to like the hyperintelligence of like a light flashing before your eyes, before a car crash or something?
Sure, very much so.
Mhm.
I'd say it's very similar, if not identical. If you've ever been in a car crash, you'll notice there's this very curious phenomenon where time stops in a way. And the events are actually happening, time doesn't actually literally stop, but all of a sudden everything's sort of frozen. It happens very, very, very slowly.
Yes.
It's very curious. Yeah, but so yeah, no, it's for real. It's for real. It's not just a metaphor.
And also, when your mind quits trying to figure out a problem because
Yeah, it's the same thing.
crisis.
Yeah, similar thing, yeah.
So, I mean, I found it helpful that when reading this book, it is an old book, The Dancing Movie Masters, a book on quantum mechanics, under an incandescent light. And then as I started stalking it, and it just was so counterintuitive that the book started blowing, as in the whole phenomenon of light. It was interesting to see,
Wonderful.
because the brain was so used to making sense in a certain way.
Yeah. Which dulls it down in a way. It seems it has the effect of kind of dulling it down and making it seem somehow diminished.
Right.
Is it kind of like, I was with my sister and she was dying and she took, my brother-in-law and I were there and she took her last breath, and then all of a sudden it was like we were in a slow motion movie. It was just the weirdest thing. Everything stopped and we were just moving through in this movie. It was like it wasn't real anymore. Is that kind of the same thing as that?
Maybe,
bang?
who knows?
Yeah, because it went on for about 20 minutes, just this unreal movie, and we were just moving through it. Okay, yeah. It could put you into that bang too, or something.
I mean, there's not just one way to be with your experience. There's a myriad, an infinity of ways of being with your experience. And a lot of these kinds of tricks and yoga techniques are discovering that and finding heavy-handed ways to do that shift. Not because it's important to use these methods, but because once you get the idea that it's actually fairly flexible how you are with your experience, the way you are with it will begin to lighten up and loosen up, and you'll find you have a greater degree of mobility in being able to be with it in different ways. Because the dull normalcy approach is, well, this is just reality and it's the way it is and it's going along and nothing's changing and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, wait for dinner.
Kind of a new awareness comes in with it.
Yeah, well, you see, you discover that all of a sudden it's like you can kind of change channels and make it, see it differently or see it very differently.
Right.
And all of a sudden your range of options opens up and you become to see that there's not just one way to be with, it's the same experience,
right,
but you can be with it this astounding range of other ways.
Yeah.
I mean, just like be aware of the space your experience is appearing in. The subjective experiential space, if you want to call it that your experience is appearing in, and just feel that. And all of a sudden your experience assumes an entirely different perspective to you just being here and in it. For example, but that's just one aspect of, that's one possibility of just an infinity of different perspectives, many of which are equally relevant.
No, that's really beautiful. It's totally pulling you into it totally. Instead of thinking you're into it with the mind, you're just there.
Yeah, of course.
Totally. Oh, yeah. It's good.
But this is like that. This is literally an infinity. It's an open-ended infinity. And all of this is about coming to notice that. Coming to notice it and appreciate it, which lets you partake of it as that and gives you flexibility of taking advantage of its own flexibility. And it's not anything that it hasn't always been, but typically we haven't noticed that because it's a kind of a dullness that sets in when we are just succumbed to the hypnosis of normalcy. And so all of this is just a matter of kind of letting yourself wake up from that and notice that there's alternatives, and then all of a sudden you can access these, the variety of different inherent perspectives that are available in this.
Jolts you right out of the trance.
Yeah.
Just.
And then you'll find you can go in and out of it. You can visit normalcy as an interesting place to visit. You don't need to be stuck in it.
That's the part where you can step back. You're not stepping back with your mind. You're literally stepping back with awareness. Big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. Yeah. That's beautifully.
It's like it's like I said. One way of describing this yoga is where you sit in your energy.
Right.
And all of this is germane to that.
Yeah. Wow.
And the point is that you have options. It's not just one way to sit in your energy. There's a whole range of ways.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What's the deal with samadhi? I'm not sure what I'm asking exactly.
That's good.
Samadhi is nothing but. And samadhi is noticing that there's nothing but. And when you notice that there's nothing but, then you're in samadhi. I mean, in my terminology, noticing and samadhi are one and the same. And the actual fact is nothing other than noticing. And noticing that fact is good noticing, which is samadhi. So it's always samadhi. And from that perspective, even the dullness of normalcy is a kind of a samadhi.
So the reading says, do not get into a trance. So I wouldn't even know what that is. So what am I supposed to avoid?
You're asking the wrong person. A trance, to me, the only thing to avoid is, I would define a trance as orienting to an interpretational framework. In other words, you have an interpretation of what your situation is, usually unconsciously, not consciously, so you don't even know it's there. And yet it's being held as if it was true. And so the condition of normalcy, the normal condition that most people are in is basically a trance. It's because they're actually related to their experience in terms of an unconscious interpretation of, along the lines of materialism. I am my body, I'm in my body, I'm in this environment, I'm subject to the environment, I stop here and everything else is not me, and so on and so forth. But all of that framework is actually being held in the mind. It's being held conceptually. And then unconsciously, so it's just being felt. It's like hypnosis, because it's being believed in, it suddenly feels as if it's true. It feels like I am in my body. It becomes a self-fulfilling image, because you're holding it as true, so you're feeling it as if it was true. But then, a good hypnotist, for example, can make you feel like you're floating. Because it's basically just substituting, right? Can you do that?
I haven't done that.
But it's a simple suggestion. You're weightless, you're floating, you have no weight at all, you're floating. And you do something like that and you can begin to feel like you're floating. And it's exactly the same thing. It's a trance of your orienting to your experience in terms of that template that's being held in mind. Again, not necessarily deliberately, it's not like you decided to, but it's being held, and it becomes self-fulfilling. It feels as if it was like that. Because the mind is like that. The mind is very suggestible. the mind very quickly simulates what it believes to be true as if it was, and all of a sudden it feels like it's true. And that's what getting stuck is really about, is orienting unconsciously to these interpretive frameworks. And so, in large part, this is about coming to see that phenomenon and see the way the mind goes to these interpretive frameworks. And then you see they're just interpretive frameworks. So you don't even need to stop doing them. In fact, you can't stop doing them. The mind's nature is to continually throw these things up. They're like hypothetical interpretations. It's like what if? It's just a hypothesis. But the mind forgets it's a hypothesis and hypnotizes itself that it's so, and then it feels like it is. But when you see that there's this phenomenon of the interpretive frameworks and the way the mind establishes that so naturally, then you can notice that when it's happening to you. You can notice, oh, I'm feeling as if things are a certain way, and you can notice that's an interpretive framework. And just in that noticing, you don't even need to stop it to be free of it. Even if it's happening, you still aren't stuck in it, because you aren't unconsciously believing it to be true, to be objectively true.
This is very much the same as dreaming.
It's exactly the same as dreaming. And going lucid in a dream is exactly the same thing I'm talking about. When you go lucid in a dream, you get that it's a dream, and so what you're interpreting as being is not really that. The dragon that's chasing you is not really a dragon, not really chasing you, because it's just a dream. It doesn't necessarily make the dragon go away, but it's not a dragon, it's just a dream, so who cares? And this is just like a dream in that sense. It's wide open. There's no way to know what it is or pin it down. So it's exactly a dream. This is a dream, okay. That's fine with me. And yet, if it feels a certain way, then you're oriented to a trance of believing an interpretational framework in your imagination, which essentially becomes self-fulfilling because you hypnotize yourself to feel as if it's so, just like you do in a dream when you're lost in a dream. And when you see that it's just a dream, all of a sudden, I was just interpreting it as being a problem or threatening. I'm not even really here. It's just appearing. And this is really just appearing. You're not really here. You're the real here, but the real here is what this is appearing in, not the space that is appearing.
Well, this must be a much stronger dream because, in a dream, you wake up in your dream, you're lucid, you say, oh, I'm dreaming, it's a dragon, so who cares? But if a dragon or some threat appears in this, it's like, I'm still going to see that as a threat, even though I'm very aware of it at this moment. I'm noticing everything, but it's like, I don't go, oh, well, this is just a dream. No, this guy actually could shoot me, or this dragon could eat me. It's not an actual, it doesn't seem to be an actual dream like a dream. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but mostly dreams don't either.
I follow you, but in actuality, it's not necessarily like that. And dealing with circumstances as if they're effective is not a problem in terms of thinking they're actual. In other words, if someone comes in here with a gun, they could shoot me and I would be wounded, let's say. But if someone shot you in a dream, you could be wounded. You say, oh, in a dream it's just a dream. Well, here it's just an apparition, too. But that doesn't mean that if someone comes in with a gun and I have a self-preservation instinct that my body inherently has, a survival instinct, I might be motivated to do something about that by way of avoiding the threat. And that's no problem, but that has nothing to do with anything. I might do the same thing in a dream. Or not. The point, I think it's sort of a red herring whether or not this is a dream. But the point is to see the interrelationship between apparition and interpretation. And especially how vulnerable the mind is to suggestion of taking these interpretive frameworks and actualizing them very strongly in a kind of a synesthetic, hypnotic fulfillment. In other words, if you think things are a certain way, you can feel very convincingly in your gut that they are. And discovering that mechanism and discovering kind of being able to turn it on or turn it off, or at least play with it a little bit, can open up the sense of being locked into things are the way they are, and that's what it is, and I'm stuck with it.
I mean, the big thing.
Yeah, sorry.
Big thing for me, it seems to be, it's like, maybe this is interpretive framework, because when something is happening, let's say there's a threat or just some irritation or whatever, and I just I wish this weren't happening.
Right.
That's like, I wish things were different than the way they actually are.
Right.
But like, I guess you're saying just see it as it is.
Well, but the wishing that it was different is also just an apparition.
How?
A mosquito is buzzing around, and it's annoying me, and I try and swat it. But the mosquito appearing as an apparition, and me being annoyed and wanting to swat is an apparition. And my thoughts and emotions about it are an apparition. It's all apparition. It's not like that's not me and this is me. The me that's appearing is also apparition. The real me is basically disembodied seeing principle that is perceiving the apparition, which is the real meaning of the dream too. I mean, where are you relative to the dream? You aren't in it, you're seeing it. And that's the revelation in lucidity. And the same revelation is had here, when you see that you are the disembodied seeing. And the seeing is actually not in the scene, in a simple sense of being located when you're subject to it. And you can see the way that's so, and feel that's not just this philosophy or hypothesis. It's literally true.
We often have, our experience here likened to a dream, and sort of understand that. I have difficulty with that because this is actual. How we might be misguided and deluded and not recognize it as actual, but where the actual manifestation in a sort of more concrete way of what is. So it's hard for me to accept that like a dream, this is like a dream, because to me, it's only a dream if we dream.
Right.
But
when you're dreaming, the dream is actual.
Yeah.
The word actual means present in experience. So this is certainly actual. This is present in experience.
That's
and when you're dreaming, when you go to sleep, this is not actual anymore. When you go to sleep, sleeping is the deep sleep perspective is actual. Because it's what's present in experience. And when you start dreaming, then that's what's actual, because it's what's present in experience. When you're dreaming, how actual is this room? This may as well be something that appeared in a dream from that perspective. So in other words, the assumption that the waking life is realer than some other experiential condition, look at that very closely, because you might find it's an assumption.
Well, I agree with you that the dream is actual.
Sorry?
I agree that the dream is actual.
Right.
This is actual.
Yes, sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't agree.
But it's the same actual.
Yeah.
Actual means here now.
Yes.
And this is certainly here now. And when I close my eyes, all of a sudden the room disappears, and this is here now. But the sound doesn't go anywhere. If I suddenly had narcolepsy and dropped off to sleep, none of this would be actual. I'd be somewhere else, and that would be actual.
I think it gets a bit misleading or a bit too simplistic when we use that. Because you see it everywhere, like in books, all talk about that. When you think of life, our life as a dream, Because I agree with everything you're saying, but
Right.
that's not quite accurate, is it?
Well, nothing you can say is accurate, and nothing is simple. Like a dream doesn't make it simple. The phenomena of a dream is not a simple phenomena. The phenomena of apparition within experience is not a simple phenomena. It's an inconceivable, infinite miracle. And that's the case whether it's a waking state appearing or the dream state appearing. So, this is not a question of simplifying it or turning it into a nice metaphor that turns it into a non-entity. It's very much an entity. But the question is, what is this entity and how does it work and what's its orientation to your being, to your existence?
I think one of the things that's preventing me from seeing this truth, that this is a dream, is the fact that there is a memory that is left behind from previous day's dream.
Right.
Like if you consider it a broken.
Right, I
I'm sure there
understand.
is.
So in that sense, it's not something like, oh, okay, whatever I do today will be gone. So it doesn't matter. So I can kind of give up my inferred framework and experiment crazy. Or
The IRS will still know.
yeah,
The NSA will still know all the very details.
right.
Yeah, no, for sure, that's a curious phenomenon. But that phenomena itself is subtle and complex because you're looking at the phenomena of memory. And memory is very interesting. It's very strange. And it's certainly true that the waking state seems to have a high degree of relative continuity compared to the dream state in terms of persistence of memory, in terms of relatively consistent flows of events over long periods of time and so on and so forth. But exactly what that is and exactly how that happens and exactly why that is that way is open. You can't know. It certainly is that way. You can see that it seems to be that way. But I would caution drawing any implications from that. You can observe the phenomena is like that. And it's interesting that that's the case. And it's certainly interesting that the dream state and the waking state appear to be differentiable on that basis. The dream state seem to have a much wilder degree of discontinuity in the waking state, typically, and a much less wilder degree of discontinuity certainly from dream to dream, but even from period to period within the dream. And the waking state seems to have a high degree of continuity, which gives rise to theories of cause and effect and so on and so forth, and history. But all of that is just a phenomenon you can observe, and you can't really go further than that. You can't say what that implies or what that means. The normal implication, sort of the materialist implication, is that the past is real, and the past is somehow embodied in the present, and it's going to lead into the future, and somehow all of it partakes of an equal reality, even though only the present is somehow present. But there's other ways of interpreting the same phenomenon. It doesn't challenge the phenomenon, because the entire history of the past is, the only evidence for the past is memory and apparent continuity. And but exactly what those phenomena are and how they work is no question. And it's certainly true that one hypothesis is the material hypothesis, that it's all kind of real and it kind of has persistence and so on and so forth, but it's not the only interpretation. And none of that is verifiable. Because the only thing we have access to, of course, is the instantaneous present, which is continually disappearing. I mean, the present moment has no duration. If you look at the present moment, it's very strange. It has zero duration, and yet it alone exists. So this is already gone. So the circumstances have already disappeared and changed into the new circumstances continually in real time with zero duration. And that's the only thing that is actual. That's the only thing that's findable. And memory is an aspect of that instantaneous appearing and disappearing. And expectation of the future is an aspect of that instantaneous experience. And the apparent continuity is an aspect of that. And so given that, then what? You can't really authoritatively say anything. You can't really authoritatively draw conclusions. You can say, it feels to me intuitive that the interpretation of, the past and the flow of events is actual. And certainly most people would agree with that. But I'm just pointing out that that's, the phenomena itself is very curious.
There is still a strange sense of freedom in this, in the sense that though it seems like yesterday the tax forms came and today I have to submit the tax forms, it all has the memory footprint of Groundhog Day. In the same sense that yes, it is the whole ocean thing, and at some point, maybe they get off. And that message is pretty clear. Although how it precisely ends, we just don't mind, which is why all this.
I mean, it's all very curious, and my point is not that it is a certain way, but my point is to question the way you're used to assuming it is, and notice the way in which it actually is very slippery and very difficult to resolve and difficult to pin down. And so I recommend being very wary of drawing conclusions, because you're liable to draw yourself into a trap of limitation. It's like with classical physics versus quantum physics. Classical physics is fine, but be careful of buying into it, because then you cut yourself off from accessing the quantum phenomena and being able to build transistors and things.
Well, I have this glimpse, like maybe average couple times a day. I see this peculiarity. Is just that what I was seeing is, even though what the scenes is the same, but seems like it's not like this me of looking. It is just, I can't say what it is looking, but it's extremely peculiar.
Yes.
It's like a shift from this to, but it's still kind of localized, even though it's happened maybe a couple of days or more, or something like that. I don't know how to translate to larger.
No, it's not important. But that's very good, because you're noticing that there's different dimensions and different ways to be with this as alternatives. That's very good. Just keep playing with it. There's no right way and wrong way. There's no final result or an answer. You just play with it, and you discover different alternatives, and that's very interesting.
So yeah, it is. But from there, I can feel it's like the who am I may be coming to play, or something. But you cannot point to this who.
No.
There's no way.
No, but you can look for it. Find what is it? What is it that's in your experience? Where is it?
Well, I cannot say.
No, you can't say. No,
yeah,
of course not.
But extremely peculiar.
Yeah, well, look at that peculiarity. The peculiarity is a very good thing to look at.
Yeah. Well, I have to give up to describe it, because there's no way.
No, it can't be described.
Yeah,
Forget about describing. That's not important.
Yeah. So just
anything valuable can't be beyond description. So if you can't describe it, then you're getting into the good stuff. Anyway, we have to knock off now, I'm afraid, because I have to catch the plane. Thank you all very much for joining me this weekend.
Thank you.